Good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's live feed. This is going to be a marathon live feed, and because it's going to be a marathon, we're going to split it into two halves. And I'm not going to say we're saving the best to last, because all of it's going to be fantastic. It's all going to be absolutely amazing. Tonight, I've got Pastor Wale Babatunde with me, and at 9 o'clock, Tommy Robinson will be joining us live to continue this discussion. He's got delayed in what he's doing at the minute. You all know how busy he is. There's always loads of stuff going on there. So initially, Pastor Wale's going to talk a bit about himself, about his views on current affairs in the United Kingdom, and also on why he came to the UK. So first of all, I want to introduce Pastor Wale. I've known him now since 2018. He shared a platform with us on the pro-Brexit demo on, I think it was the 18th of June, or sometime in June. Anyway, it was whatever Independence Day was in June. And he really brought the house down. And now Pastor Wale's involved in the Hearts of Oak movement with Alan Craig, Pete McElvenna, and loads of other people who feel passionately about this country and want to see this country saved from the potential mayhem that looks like is about to be unleashed on it. So, Pastor Wale, if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, what your calling is, and really, I guess, why you're in the UK as well, and how you managed to get yourself to the UK, and how you feel you've been called to the UK. So if you could just do a bit of an introduction about give us a bit of a life history. We've got plenty of time because Tommy ain't going to be here till 9 o'clock, so you can go as long as you want, Pastor Wale.
Well, thank you, Richard. Thank you, Richard. It's such a pleasure to be on your show. It's always a pleasure to talk about our nation, our beloved nation, Great Britain, the nation that I love with a passion. And basically, I'm from Nigeria, was born in the nation of Nigeria. I lived in Nigeria for until about 29 years ago. And I am from a family of six siblings, mother and father. They're all Christians, scattered. I'm married. I have children. I'm a pastor. I pastor, and I oversee a number of denominations. I'm an author. I'm a mentor. I also speak on issues bordering on social justice. And it was about almost 29 years ago that I felt a definite call to this country. You know, I felt a definite call to come into Great Britain. And what God spoke to me is that he wants me to come to this nation to come and partner with the people of this nation, because he wants to bring about a change. You know, I always say to people, this is the only nation that has the name Great before its name, Great. And I've done a lot of research. I've done a lot of research into our history, the history of this nation. Unfortunately, many people, our children, are not being taught. I've done a lot of history, and I've found out that this nation indeed used to be very great, very great. I am not saying that everything that we've done in the nations has always been right. No, there is no nation that is perfect. No individual is perfect. But this nation used to be very great. And I found out through my research, it's in our archive, the people who really made this nation great, Richard, were Christians. I can get into politics. You know, the person who led the movement of the abolition of the slave trade was a Christian, William Wilberforce. If you look at the game of football, 33% of the football clubs that was started in this nation, starting from Aston Villa. Aston Villa used to be called Aston Villa Methodist Football Club. It were all started in the church. Barnsley Football Club, Queen's Park, Tottenham and Manchester City. They were all Christian. And these guys wanted to use their gifting, their position, to bring about a social change. Many people, many of our viewers may not know that Boots Chemist, the famous Boots Chemist, was founded by, and one of the things Boots Chemist did in those days, there was a price fixing. The average person could not buy medication. What did the founder of Boots did? He cut down the price and he began to sell to the common man on the street. And this was because of his Christian conviction. And this is why, Richard, I feel that my ministry, my service to this nation, cannot be just within the four walls of a nation. We must talk about social justice. We must talk about changing the narrative in this nation. And so I've been here right now for almost 30 years. We've planted a church. We've spoken several times in parliament, in different consultations, and we've done a number of things, led days of prayers in Westminster, and we continue to do it.
Yeah, I think you mentioned Parliament there, Pastor Wally, and one of the things that impressed me when I met Lord Pearson in Parliament, and obviously Tommy's been into Parliament, met Lord Pearson as well. When you walk into Parliament for the first time, you see these magnificent portraits, and they're all scenes from the Bible. On almost every wall that you look at, and you look at even the way that the Parliament is organized, and it's almost like a church, an old-fashioned church meeting house. And the reality is a lot of our viewers and a lot of people that follow us are not Christians. A lot of them are atheists, and we've got to respect that and not in any way make this some sort of little holy club. And what I always say to people is, I'm the most failed Christian you'll ever meet. Don't look to me, look to Christ rather than looking to me. But the reality is that the heritage of this country is firmly based on the Bible. When we go back to the Reformation and we look at what happened to the reformers and the way they were tortured and murdered and burnt at the stake and all the oppression that they suffered, and then we come right the way through, like you were saying, to the abolition of the slave trade, and we think about people like John Newton, who was a slave trader himself, and actually was actually captured and became actually, I think, was more or less sold into slavery in Freetown in Sierra Leone, and was actually, he became a slave to a black slave master, which is kind of ironic. And then, of course, John Newton himself had an amazing conversion experience in a storm on a ship. And again, a lot of people won't even know this story about John Newton. John Newton was the man that wrote that great hymn, Amazing Grace. And and the thing about John Newton was he didn't get it straight away. He didn't, as soon as he became a Christian, he didn't stop being a slave trader. It was a journey. It took him a long time to get to the position where he realized that the slave trade was fundamentally evil. And then, of course, started campaigning and meeting with people like Wilberforce, and obviously he didn't go into politics, but he did it through his ministry and so on and so forth. So people are unaware of the history, and you were mentioning Wilberforce there. And again, this is a story that's never told. Once slavery was abolished in the UK, the Royal Navy were deployed against the slave trade, and they freed slaves and they sank slave ships right the way around the world. And I think one of the things that worries me greatly, well, there's I mean, at the minute, there's a lot of things that worry me greatly, but the rewriting of history and almost the brainwashing of our young people, black and white, into thinking that the history of the United Kingdom is something to be ashamed of. And, it's like the portrait of Oliver Cromwell. Well, Oliver Cromwell got his portrait painted. He said, "Paint me warts and all. Don't make me look good looking. Just paint me exactly as I am." And I think English history's got to be told warts and all. But the reality is, yes, there are warts, but there's so much good that's been done by Britain. And even, dare I say it, and this will get me absolutely lynched by the left wing and by the people that hate us. But even, dare I say it, the British Empire. And I spoke to people when I was in Africa and in countries that had terrible trouble after the British withdrew. And these were men who were very serious-minded men. And they said, look, if we're honest, things were actually better under British rule than they were when the chaos swallowed our country, and we've only got to look at Zimbabwe, Uganda, Sierra Leone, and even what's happening in Nigeria now. And that's not saying the people of Nigeria and those other countries shouldn't have self-determination, but something went wrong in those nations after the British withdrew, and that's a controversial issue. But what would you say about that, Pastor Wale?
Well, Richard, like you said, I believe everybody should have self-determination. That's absolutely, I'm all for that. But one thing I will tell you is that Britain, our government have not done us service by not teaching history. I'm an historian. And when they cut off your history or they try to rewrite your history, they have stolen something great from you. Richard, I'm amazed why our children will not be taught. The average child in this country is simply ignorant. That's why I've written 3 books about our history. The first one is Great Britain Has Fallen. The other one is Awake Great Britain. And the last one, Great Men and Women That Made Great Britain Great. I'm going to tell you the truth. I don't think everything that Britain did in the nations of the world, we're going to endorse it, or we're going to say, oh, it was great. No. But let me tell you something. There were other things, legacies that they left that I am grateful. I'm a beneficiary. Let me give you an example. I come from the Baptist tradition. My parents have been there for over 60 years. I went to the Baptist. Some of the missionary schools they left there were the best. Methodist church, Methodist school, Anglican school, and I am grateful. Some of the best hospitals that they have in certain places in Africa were started by the missionary. So if I was to be in politics in England today, I will make sure our history is being taught, because we have a whole lot of our children today who are simply ignorant. There is no nation, when you begin to look back at our history, you have your dark past, but you must also celebrate our greatness. Look at democracy. We can pride ourselves in our democracy in this country. Did you know, Richard, that our nation, Britain, is one of the few nations on earth that receives people from other nations, and we feed them, we give them money, we treat them, send their children to school. It doesn't just happen. And they have so much right of conscience, rights of association, right of religion, and everything. In fact, you can come to Britain and talk against the government. You can do whatever. And we need to tell people, this is our heritage. This is great. So it's not everything about Britain is not bad.
Yeah, exactly. And I think what we've got, and I don't know if you'd agree with me on this, but what we've got is an establishment that seems to be really infiltrated with a self-hatred, a self-loathing of everything that's British. That and we proved this with the Brexit, and that's why it was so great to have you on the Brexit rally. They basically proved that they don't have any self-confidence in the nation, because, like you say, it's not just young people that are ignorant of history. The reality is the vast majority of journalists and politicians seem totally ignorant of history, and especially the Christian history. A few years ago, Melvin Bragg wrote a book about the King James version of the Bible, and the influence that had for the past, it's 400 years, and it was 1611, so it must have been 300-400 years, whatever it is, and it was 400 years, and he wrote a book about the influence that had on not just the UK, but amongst the American, the African American people who took that book as a charter for liberation, and again, at the forefront of abolishing slavery in the United States were evangelical Christians, Methodists, Free Methodists, and that was their clarion call, and they got involved, but. The African Americans looked at the book of Exodus and said, we are the Israelites in Egypt, and this is our charter. that we can get our freedom, and this is how we can do it, by trusting in God and so on and so forth. And the thing that worries me about what's happening at the moment and what we're seeing in society in general is all of that is forgotten about. So all of that history and that heritage, and you don't have to be a Christian to understand Christian principles. And I think we're at a very, very dangerous juncture at the minute, because there's always a vacuum, and if you have a vacuum, that vacuum's got to be filled by something. And Britain, for the past, certainly as long as I've been alive, has been legislating against what this country stands for, and legislating really for the enemies of the country. You'd almost think that the communists won the Cold War by the way the country's been governed at the minute, you know. So yeah, so what do you think? What do we do then? What do we do to get back on track? How do we get ourselves back into the position that we need to be in?
You know, I read the Bible, and my audience will know that I'm a pastor, I'm a Christian, and I'll tell you the truth, nothing but the truth. The book of Jeremiah, chapter 6:17 tells us we should go back to the old ways. We should go back to the foundation. You've alluded to it, Richard. If you go to everywhere in our nation, go into our parliament, you see all the relics, you see all the things about our Christian heritage. Did you know that popular education started during the revival of John Wesley? Popular education started with the revival of John Wesley. I've spoken a little bit about football, the game of football. We gave it to the world. You go to BBC, go into the entrance hall of BBC. They have their charter, I believe it's 1928. And if you look at the charter of the BBC, it was quoted from the book of Philippians chapter 4. You know, the first director general of the BBC was Lord Reed, and he was a Christian. You know, so if you look at every sphere, Oxford University is the pride of our nation. Cambridge University, pride of our nation. You know that Oxford University started as a Bible college. Eton College, you know, that has produced about 18 to 19 prime ministers and presidents. It has a Christian background. So you go anywhere, go into banking, everywhere, every part of our nation is Christian. And you know what, Richard? If they were to uproot the foundation of your house, that house is going to collapse. What we have been trying to do in this nation, you know, what I'm saying right now, you know, many people may not like what I'm saying, but a house cannot stand without its foundation. Listen, Richard, your forefathers from this nation came to Africa. They came to give us the Bible. Did you know that the King James Version of the Bible, produced in 1611, is the most read translation of the Bible up till today in Africa? They gave us the Bible. They changed our ways, many of our values. They built us schools. Many of them died in Africa, like David Livingstone. And come on, I got into England and I began to hear people say there is no God. And you know what? You know what has happened to us today? We have left our foundation. You know, like I read a book when I was in secondary school, things fall apart. The center cannot hold. The reason why things are collapsing in our nation today, we have left the faith of our fathers. You know, our foundation is broken. That's why, Richard, you know, this is annoying that people are going to come from outside. Yeah, I'm a Nigerian. I'm grateful to be a British citizen. Why will I come from Nigeria and I dictate to you how you should run your nation? Well, I read the Bible. You know how that happens to us? God said in the Bible, he said, when you neglect me, you turn your backs against me, foreigners are going to invade your country. They are going to govern you, and there will be absolutely nothing that you can do. You know, what is happening is just common sense. Why will an outsider come, you know, to change everything, and the people in a nation cannot fight? You know, you've almost become a minority in your own country. It's because we left our foundation.
Yeah, I think that's very true. And I think the other thing, if we think about it, even on a secular level, because obviously not everybody that's watching, you know, would believe what we believe. But if we look at it from a secular level, ideas like freedom, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of worship. They are biblical ideas. Like you say, even ideas, anti-racist ideas. I mean, if one of the things I wanted to talk about, one of the reasons I wanted to get you on, and we'll talk about this more when Tommy comes on later on this evening after we have our little tea break and biscuits and come back at 9 o'clock. But the reality is that according to the Bible, there's only one race. And it's the human race. And you have a different skin pigmentation to me. That is the only difference. Under the skin, we're exactly the same. We bleed red blood. Our souls are exactly the same. Our minds are exactly the same. And one of the real, I think, the cursed things that and I know Tommy feels passionately about this because he was speaking about it earlier on in the week. One of the curses that we're suffering at the minute is this idea of identity politics. I don't identify myself as a white man, and I don't identify you as a black man. We're just human beings, and this has got so mixed up, and people have basically hijacked something that is good, because obviously it's. I think we should actually get rid of the word racism, and you should replace that with the word prejudice or bigotry. Because everybody has prejudice and everybody has bigotry to a certain extent, but there's only one race. And if we can all realize that under the skin, and even the scientists would say that we're all related now. I mean, they used to say that we were all developed at different times in different places, but even scientists admit that we're all the seed of one man and one woman way, way, way back. They don't agree on the time scale, but the reality is this false notion of race is causing great division in the nation at the minute. It is an outdated idea from the 1800s, and to me, it needs to be put to bed and put to one side. I mean, what do you think about that? How can we deal with that? How can we do that?
Well, you've said it. We came from one race, and that's what the Bible teaches me. It's one blood. We came from one blood. If they open you up and open me up, Richard, it's the same organ we have, the same blood. And so interesting that we found some men, sometimes a black man would donate his organ to a white man. And, I think maybe when Tommy comes, we're going to pick this up. There is only one race. And I tell you what, the solution is in the church. I can see what is happening all around the world is pathetic. But the church, I'll tell you the truth, the church has a solution to it, and I can relate to you as my brother. You are my brother. I don't look down on you, call you white. No, we should never judge people based on the color of their skin.
Yeah.
No, that's wherever there is racism, I will condemn it. Where there are prejudices, I will condemn it. And to be honest, there are lots of it all around. And we need to fight for justice. Wherever we are, we need to fight for justice. But you know what? The solution to the problem that we have today is in the Bible, is in the gospel. One race. And, that's why I invite people who are still considering the gospel, consider, because the world is in chaos. The world is in crisis, but there is peace in Jesus.
I think that's absolutely true. I mean, the reality is, and the thing is this, I mean, this is one thing that people probably don't know from our history, because again, this is, it's not really talked about outside of Christian circles, but every time humanity has made, if you like, a great leap forward, it's been as a result of a great spiritual move in the Christian church. When you were talking about John Wesley earlier on in the conversation, when John Wesley burst onto the scene in the 1700s, the whole of the UK was literally on the teetering on the abyss of a civil war, something similar, or a revolution, something similar to what eventually happened in France. And John Wesley came to the nation with a completely fresh message that had been lost and forgotten, and he was, he changed the nation. I mean, Wesley influenced Wilberforce, influenced John Newton, influenced all those men, and that was then lived out in the 1800s in the great missionary movement. You were talking about missionaries going to Africa, and again, I don't know whether any of our viewers will know this, but what the missionaries used to do when they went to Africa, they literally forsook everything. They packed their belongings for them and their children in coffins. So they traveled they traveled light. The only thing that they had was a coffin with a Bible and whatever they needed to get them to Africa. And most of them, when they got, especially when they got to West Africa, and I've been to West Africa, and that's where there is a slight difference, and black men have a huge advantage in West Africa. So you're a lot better at surviving there than we are. And they got yellow fever, they got malaria, and they just died. But what they did was they changed Africa, and Africa is still benefiting from that, from that movement, as are many other countries around the world, and even China, with all its problems, China is still benefiting from from what happened. So those parts of history are just not talked about. Now, obviously, the other side to that, and we've got to be honest about this, the other side to things like the Reformation and the English Civil War, there was a lot of violence done in the name of Christianity, and we can't ignore that, and we can't pretend it didn't happen, because it did happen, and it wasn't right. And that's something we've got to be very, very, very aware of, and be honest about, because again, a lot of my atheist friends will say, well, what about the Reformation? What about, what happened in Germany, and so on and so forth, where tens and thousands and maybe millions of people died during the Reformation. But at the end of the day, what you get out of that is what we've got in modern democracies, modern governance, the rule of law. All of those things come from Christianity, whether it's cultural Christianity or whether it's actually, a vibrant Christianity that people believe in. But obviously, we're not here to just preach at people. We're here to try and offer a solution for the problems that we've got now. And unless God does something miraculous, not everybody that's in this country is going to become a Christian. So it's having that influence, and that's why I think it's so important for you to be involved in this movement, because you're a pastor, you're a man of God, you're a man who speaks the truth, and I think the influence that you can have on people is huge, and we've got to find a place for you to work within this movement and have a voice within this movement, so that you can speak the truth into what's happening in the UK at this present time. And I think that's vitally important, because obviously some people will get involved in politics, some people will do street demonstrations, some people will do videos and talk about the issues that we face, but somebody has to have a voice, a prophetic voice to the country today. And I think that's where you come in, Pastor Wale.
Richard, let me tell you, I'm often inspired by many people. One of the people that have inspired me so much was William Wilberforce. William Wilberforce was going to go into the ordained ministry. He was going to become a priest. So he went to his friend, John Wesley. He told John Wesley, said, John, I would like to be an ordained minister of the gospel. And I think one of the best advice that anybody could have was what John Wesley gave to him. You know what he said to him? He said, God can use you even in politics. So he contested as an MP in Hull, and he became the MP. Let me tell you one good thing that he did that has inspired me, and which I believe you and many others on this platform can learn from. He formed what was known as Clapham set. Clapham set. Most of them were living in Clapham in London here. They were professionals, and they worked hand in hand. I have often said to people, our nation is in crisis. We need a reformation, and not one person can do it alone. We're going to need experts. We're going to need people in different disciplines. We're going to need people in politics. We're going to need people in media. We're going to need people in banking and finance. We're going to need people in the health sector. We're going to need people who will collaborate, who will form a movement together. We're not talking about confrontational. We're not talking about carrying arms. Who will present things to the parliament? Who will dialogue? This is why one of the things I say to the church is the church is not supposed to be in a building. Jesus said in Matthew 5:13, he says, you are the light of the world. You are the salt of the earth. That's why I'm involved in this kind of discussion. We are supposed to bring a change to our society. We're supposed to speak up when there is injustice in our society. We're supposed to speak up for the poor, for the least, for the last, for the lost, for people who are not empowered. That's what Christianity is all about. And you know what? I can't do it alone. You cannot do it alone, Richard. We need to collaborate. We need to become one voice. And what greater testimony do we have in a nation and in a world that has been divided with based on their skin color? For people to look at you and say, look at that guy Richard has a different skin color, Wale has a different skin color, but yet we're holding hands, mutual respect, and we're saying we can do this together. We can bring about a change in our nation. We can impact life, and the people that come after us will be grateful that we walk on the shores of Great Britain.
Yeah, totally. And I think one of the things that's challenged me, I mean, I got involved in this movement in 2017 after the terrorist attacks where the children were killed at the Ariana Grande concert, and obviously there was the knife attacks in Borough Market, and women were literally had their throats cut while they were while they're eating the dinner with their husbands. And that was a wake-up call for me and for many other people. And I thought, as a Christian and as a veteran, I couldn't stand by and not get involved. And believe you me, that there's been a great cost to many of us who have got involved in this movement, a great personal cost to many of us. And I saw people like Tommy Robinson and Anne-Marie Waters, who were secular. I mean, both Tommy and Anne-Marie are not hostile to our message overtly, but they are secular. I mean, they wouldn't call themselves Christians. And I saw them involved, literally putting their lives at risk. And I saw the church doing nothing. And I'm sure you've had this as well. And I'm not going to get into a whole church bashing event, because that's not what I'm about. But I saw the church not been engaged with this, and actually, when you do get involved, many people in the church actually actively oppose you. And Tommy was on a feed the other day with the guys from Speaker's Corner. I don't know if you know Hatton and what's the other guy's name? Daniel from Speaker's Corner that debate with the Muslims down there. And he said he went to the church, and the church, they shunned him. They sent him away. They said, "We don't want to know about what you're doing. You're bigoted. You're filled with hate." And anyone that knows Tommy knows he's neither bigoted or filled with hate. He's got a very deep and serious concern about Islam, and I want to come onto the Islam issue just in a minute. But that was the situation that we found ourselves in, and that's why I'm so glad that you're involved. I'm so glad about other people like Hatton and Daniel and Pete McElvenna and Alan Craig. And others. I mean, actually, the vice chair of For Britain's a Christian as well. So there is Christian influence in this movement, and I don't think that's there by accident. I mean, there's a lot of pitfalls and a lot of difficulties that come against us. But I believe that God is in this movement, and that despite our weaknesses and failings, He can still use us to make change in the country. But I want to talk to you now about what you're doing up in Abuja in Nigeria, because I did a video the other day, and one of the issues I have with the group called Black Lives Matter is they don't seem to think that Black Lives Matter unless they're in America or Britain, because what's been happening in Nigeria among Black African Christians and the way that they have been literally tormented by jihadists from Boko Haram, and also the Fulani tribesmen and other jihadists and Muslim fundamentalists. Could you tell us a bit about that, a bit about what's happening and the similarities between that and the child grooming in the UK, and just really what this current situation is in Nigeria? And again, why we should be interested in that? Why would people on this feed tonight be interested in what's happening right now in Nigeria and the similarities, and really what's happening with radical Islam in northern and central Nigeria?
Well, thank you, Richard, for asking me. Like I said, I'm a Nigerian, and we work in Nigeria. Nigeria is my home. I have my family in Nigeria. There is a lot of persecution happening in Nigeria at the moment. Villages are being wiped out. as of this last week, there was a bishop that was captured, girls being taken, all manner of things happening. Nigeria used to be relatively peaceful. Many places, even in the Middle Belt, they used to be very peaceful. Right now is no longer peaceful. They just come in, wipe you away, shoot you, slash your throat. It's all over. Well, it's in the news. And Richard, let me say this. I stand for justice wherever I am. And it doesn't matter whether it touches the Chinese, whether it touches the Indians, whether it touches the Brits, whether it touches the Ghanaian, wherever I meet it, that's what I stand for. Simply because the God of the Bible is a God of justice. And, Richard, as a Christian and as a pastor, we cannot pick and choose. This is why I say to people, yes, if people say Black Lives Matter, absolutely. I said yes to that. I said, not just Black lives that matter. I say to them that, what, white lives matter. I said, Indians' lives matter. And let me even tell you what matters most to me, the lives of unborn children. Nobody's talking about it. Life is life. Your life is one, mine is one. And life is sin. I want to see more people, Richard, more Christians rising up, and demonstrating about the millions of people that have been killed on this shore. And nobody's talking. Children have been killed every day. Look at my nation. I expect if there was a time that we need to demonstrate about things happening in Nigeria, the lives of Christians. People are being killed. And I want to say, and the funny thing, Richard, is, who is killing the people there? Blacks. We are the one killing ourselves.
Yep.
And it's a shame. And again, I'm going to say that when people lack the fear of God, when they are not born again, when they have not become a new creation, that's what happens. It really does not matter whether a life is a Christian or not. It's a life. So we need to defend them. We need to speak up. I'm against racism wherever we see it. I'm against all forms of prejudice against women, against men, against children. But we got to be holistic. And the church must not keep quiet. We cannot be selective, Richard. We got to speak up wherever it is. Be it in America. I watched that young man, the way he was killed. That was horrific. That was terrible. If it was my brother, I will fight. And I think every good peace-loving person must speak up for justice. But again, it must not end there. We must speak into the situation in Nigeria, where people have been murdered every day. We must speak into the situation of children that have been aborted every day. So we must be holistic.
Yeah, exactly. And I think particularly in Nigeria, I mean, one of the interesting things about the Nigerian situation is that, the Fulani who are coming in and attacking the indigenous people in Nigeria, a lot of them, they're not even from the local area. So they're coming in, herding their cattle through farms, creating all sorts of problems. And then when the farmers have the sort of audacity to say anything about it, they'll come back with AK-47s and wipe the whole village out. And I mean, it is a genocide. I mean, we're not talking a few people dying. We're talking thousands and thousands of people dying in Nigeria. And the other thing is, I mean, a lot of people, obviously there is an issue with mass migration and so on and so forth. The reality is that if the situations, these conflicts in Africa were sorted out and Africa was at peace, Africa would be an incredibly prosperous continent, because the resources there and the climate, I mean, one of the things I noticed when I was in West Africa, like you were never, it would be very difficult to starve in West Africa, because everywhere you walk, there was a banana tree, a pineapple growing. There was oranges, green. I couldn't work out that out. There was green oranges. I thought, are these limes or oranges? But you know what I mean? So there was a plentiful supply of food. But the problem was that because of tribalism and because of religious wars and because of politics and because of greed, that the continent is suffering. And again, that's why people want to leave and come to the West. And obviously what happens is when people in the West see this happening in Africa, and then they see it being played out on the streets of London, people get very, very frightened. And one of the things that, again, I want to talk about tonight is really, I think the last 2 weeks in the UK have made a lot of people who genuinely did not think that there was an anti-British race problem within the black community look and go, what is happening here? Because, you know, whenever I was growing up, I grew up with, you know, black people, Indian people, went to school with them, served in the army with them. There was never any of this real bitter, vocal, anti-white racism that we're seeing, that a lot of us are perceiving from groups like Black Lives Matter and that sort of thing. And that is what has happened in the last 2 weeks, I think, and we'll talk about this more when Tommy comes on. But what's happened in the last 2 weeks, I think, has put race relations in the UK back 20 or 30 years. And again, we've already covered it, but do you believe that those groups are representative of the black community? And obviously you can only speak anecdotally, but do you believe that they're representative of the black community, or do you believe they're a small minority that are agitating and using people and influencing people in a malevolent way to basically achieve an agenda that is not going to help anybody? What is the situation within the black community, or should you know? Am I kidding myself? Because I don't believe they represent the black community. But what do you think?
You know, Richard, I think if you look at the whole issue happening around, I think there's so much layers in it. I think, you know, there's the level in which there have been, you know, people prejudices, you know, sometimes structural, and so you find people rebelling and saying, you know what, we've had enough. There's some element there, and there is some truth there, you know. And I just don't have the problem with the average person. I have a problem within the church, you know. I've been in this country for a long time, and I find that the kind of integration that we should have in this country, we're not having it. Thank God for people like you. We're friends. We need to have it. And you know what has happened? We have also played. This is where the balance lies. We have also played into the hands of certain people. And said, okay, let's run with this. You know, anybody that kills people on the road is not representing me. I want to say that people who have been aggrieved, they have the right to protest. They have the right to speak up. Anybody who is a Christian must speak for justice, wherever it is. And wherever we find injustice, in whatever quarter, in whatever structure, we must try to break it down. But it must be done peacefully. You know, Richard, you mentioned something a few minutes ago about the situation in Nigeria. And I'm going to talk to you as a Nigerian. Part of the challenges some of the people have is that there are things happening in Nigeria. For example, let me give you a good example. There are politicians that steal the Commonwealth, the money of the Commonwealth, and they put it here with the knowledge of our leaders. And they shut their eyes as though it never happened. And the people know it. So many of them are upset. So when you see some people on the road, they're just waiting for an opportunity to blow things up. So what am I saying? We need to speak up. We need to challenge our politicians. And so, you know what? It's important that wherever and whatever we do, there must be justice. Justice must be done. You know, that's my take.
Yeah, and I think the reality is that since we started this movement, we've been very, very specific in what we are about. We're against all extremism. That's what we've said from the beginning. We're against, and I mean, a lot of people. I get a lot of hate from people on the far right who are racist and who are, you know, what they call themselves ethno-nationalists now, and they're saying the indigenous people of this country are threatened and blah blah blah, all that sort of stuff. And I've spoken out against that on numerous occasions. And me just being honest and looking at what's happening at the minute, I am not hearing enough black voices speaking out against white racism, and that troubles me greatly. And that's one of the issues that I've got at the minute, because I've spoken out against black racism, again, to my cost, and it is costly. You get a whole lot of blowback from that. But what I want to see is people like you, and you've done it very clearly tonight, Pastor Wale, but I want to see more people from the black community standing up and saying, if you are agitating on the issue of race and saying, one of the most horrific things I saw last week was police officers bowing the knee to a baying mob because the baying mob told them to bow the knee. And I've got friends. A good friend of mine is an ex-police officer, an ex-soldier. He's West Indian, and he's horrified by this. But because of his personal circumstance, he doesn't feel he can speak out on it. So we need to have that alternative voice, because the only voice that anybody is hearing in the country, and this is very dangerous, are the voices of the radicals. And they're not being challenged. They're not being challenged. And I think that's what a lot of people are feeling at the moment. And we need to find a way to diffuse this situation. And obviously what we're doing tonight as two Christians sitting here talking is part of the answer. But obviously not everybody involved in this debate is going to be a Christian, and we need to facilitate everybody to be able to come together, because there is a real danger here that this could spiral into something very, very dangerous and very unpleasant. And it's how we literally stop that timer and stop that bomb going off. And that's, I think, a key, getting those voices on both sides saying, no, we're not interested in the color of your skin. We're interested in, and Martin Luther King Jr., I mean, he would be horrified by what's happening at the minute, because what he would say to Black Lives Matter is he would say, no, all lives matter. Every single life matters, because what was his mantra? It's the content of a man's character and not the color of his skin, is what he should be judged by. And I think that's my mantra, and it always has been, and I'm unashamed about that. And I think we need to hear those voices from the reality is, the thing that horrifies me is we shouldn't even be talking about black or white community. We should just be talking about British people, no matter what their ethnic origin was. And that's where I think the whole idea of cultural Christianity and British culture comes in, that we can all identify around and all rally around. And of course, that's what the far left are doing, and the far right. They're trying to chop those things to bits so that we go into our little identitarian bubbles and we hide away from everyone. And what do you think? Does that make sense?
Richard, I will reiterate this. Any peace-loving person must speak up against racism in all forms. Yeah. I believe people, I don't usually like to call myself a black person, because I belong to one holy race, and it's the same. It's just the color of our skin. I think we need more people to speak. British indigenous people, we need more voices to stand up and speak and denounce. And Richard, let me tell you something. It's not going to be done overnight. We need to change structures. And we need people, different skin colors like myself, standing up. All life matters in whatever way. The life of my brothers in India matters. It does not matter. And let's be honest, Richard, almost everybody has one form of prejudice or another. But we should never look down on anybody. Black lives matter greatly. What happened in America was terrible. What has happened on the streets of England for many years, it's terrible. I have seen black boys attack each other, kill one another. We should be speaking about that. Those lives matter. And we should not just be protesting once. We should try to change the structure. We should bring alternative. We must change the narrative. We must engage the community. This is what we must do. Richard, I've said this, and I'm going to repeat it. The solution is in the Bible. The solution is with Christ. I don't have any problem. I don't even see you as a wife. I'm not going to call you a wife. You are my brother. You understand what I'm saying?
Yep.
And I feel it's the same thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's it. I mean, the scripture is very clear. I mean, Paul said it, there's neither Jew nor Gentile. And what he was saying there was that, if somebody is a believer, they are separated from that dispensation where there was the Jews and there was the Gentiles, and that was the dispensation in Judaism, that if you were a Gentile, you were worthless, or you were below the Jews. And Paul said, no, if you're in Christ, there is no Jew Gentile. That dividing war's gone. There's neither slave nor free, because at the end of the day, everybody is equal. And that's the thing. I mean, whether you're a Christian or not, the thing about this is that the issue is that in the eyes of God, everybody's equal. And that's the way that every judgment from God is going to be completely fair, because everybody, every human being, whether you're a king or a pauper, is absolutely equal. And again, that's what goes right the way throughout Christian history. You read about some men that were very, very rich, gave up everything to follow Christ, and completely gave their lives to the gospel and gave their riches away. So I mean, that's a complete other issue, but it is an issue that we probably need to talk about at some stage. Well, I think we'll wrap it up there for now. We'll have our tea break. It's probably too late for coffee, so we'll have tea and biscuits. Which is another very British trait. We've got to all go for a cup of tea, and Tommy will be coming on. Tommy will be joining us at 9 o'clock. Now, I'm not sure whether I just pause this broadcast or whether I have to leave it and set it up again as a new one. So we'll have a little intermission. So I'll kind of mute everything, but I might just leave it running, and then we'll get Tommy on. Now, Tommy's quite a shy, retiring sort of fella, so he won't talk very long. We'll probably be on here till about midnight, but no, he's going to have a lot to say, because obviously I know he's very disturbed by what's happening in the country at the minute, and we need to get this discussion out there, and I think he's got a very unique view on things as well. So guys, if everybody wants to go and have a cup of tea and come back at 9 o'clock, I'm going to pause everything here now, and we'll wait for Tommy to join us. And thanks for watching so far. We haven't had an intermission before, so this is a first on one of these live streams. And Pastor Wale, again, thanks for that discussion, and really bringing truth to bear on this situation, because I think that's the key to all this, that we're speaking truth into this situation. Yeah, okay, Carol, I'll leave the stream running, and we'll come back. Myself and Pastor Wally will have a cup of tea, and we'll come back and we can just chat until Tommy manages to join us. And Stefan, if you could put that question up again there. I didn't see it. I tried to scroll back up through it to find that question you put up there, but I couldn't see it. So Stefan, if you could put that question in again there, that'd be great. And again, apologies for not getting through a whole lot of questions there. When Pastor Wally's talking, I like to listen, because he's got a lot to say, and I think we all should listen to him. So if anyone's got any questions, please get them in the comments now, and then when Tommy comes back, we can ask Tommy a whole lot of the questions again. So let's pause, let's have a tea break, and we'll see you all in a little while. I think if we just mute, I'll just mute Pastor Wally, so that
so important and time is so limited. So you have a difficult task. We understand that.
Can anyone hear me now? Yeah. Good. Technical difficulties. Okay. First thing. By the way, John, do you still want to dive on this? I sent you the link, John. I sent you the link earlier. Check your phone there, John. You should have that link. Just bear with me, guys. Oh. Let's have a look. Okay. Okay. Sorry about this, guys. Just bear with me for 2 seconds. I will explain everything in a couple of ticks. Right. There we go. It's not working. This never happens with the BBC. Right. Okay. Right. That should be us. Pastor Wale, welcome back. I hope you had a nice cup of tea while you were away.
Yes, I did. Thank you.
Okay. Basically, Tommy is well, he can't make it tonight. He had stuff to do, and it's taken a lot longer than he was expected to do. So Tommy's going to come on tomorrow night at 7:30. I apologize to everyone for that. But what I do want to talk about, there is an important announcement that we want to make on behalf of Hearts of Oak. So if you can bear with us for that. And then if Pastor Wally wants to go, that's fine. I've got John Yates coming into the live stream. But I want to talk about the situation that we're dealing with at the minute with the Home Office and with Hearts of Oak. So I'm just going to put a graphic on the screen here. If you just bear with me 2 seconds. Okay, just bear with me. Where are we? Okay, right. Okay, John, if you can just let me know when you got that link, okay? Because you should be able to come straight in. Okay, right. There we go. Right. Okay. So basically, one of the things that we've all been working on, and again, obviously, I know, well, I believe we all feel very, very passionately about this. When Hearts of Oak was launched, one of the big issues that Hearts of Oak were looking at was the area of the rape of Britain. It's something Tommy's been very, very passionate about. Obviously, we spoke to Pastor Wally earlier on today, and he said he's very passionate about social justice issues. The Hearts of Oak started a petition about the grooming report and about releasing the grooming report, and as well as that, we've also been in the situation where we were made aware that there was 3 individuals who'd been involved in grooming. They'd been convicted of grooming. They'd been released from prison, and they hadn't basically been deported from the country. These guys were not British nationals, and the whole thrust of what Hearts of Oak are doing with the Home Office at the minute is taking legal action against the Home Office to demand that these 3 individuals are released. And what they've done, they've called for a march in the middle of July. And I think this is absolutely vital. I'll be at it. Pastor Wally's invited to speak at it. Tommy Robinson's been invited to speak at it. And this is about the core issue that's affecting millions of girls up and down the country, which is sexual abuse and rape. So basically, this is the graphic that they're launching. And this is about the demonstration that's going to be happening. Now, this demonstration will happen mid-July. We've got to confirm timings because of the legal action that Hearts of Oak are taking against the Home Office. But what will happen is sometime in the middle of July, we will all march en masse to the Home Office. We'll make speeches. We'll demand that they take action. And this is another issue of racial abuse, because obviously these white girls have been targeted by Pakistani Muslims, and these 3 individuals have basically been allowed out of prison, and nothing's happening to them. And we've got to stand for them, and we've got to demand that they're actually deported and they're put out of the country before they do it to some other vulnerable youngsters. And it's with Hearts of Oak and Women Against Groomers. So that'll be sometime in the middle of July. And I think that's very, very important that we all get behind that and we all support it. And John Yates has just joined us. And the reason I brought John in here, John's got some very, very close connections with Cameroon. By the way, can anyone hear feedback there? Can you guys hear me okay? Can you guys hear me? Everyone can hear me, yeah? Because I'm getting a lot of feedback on my side here. Okay, right. So that's mid-July. So clear your diaries for mid-July. Let's say Tommy can't join us tonight, but he said he will definitely be with us at 7:30 tomorrow evening. So Tommy's going to be with us tomorrow at 7:30. He's got a really important project he's working on at the minute. He thought he'd have it done by 9 o'clock. Unfortunately, they've had some technical issues, and the video that he's producing, which is vital to what's happening at the minute, just isn't ready just yet. So, John, do you just want to chat to us a little bit about? We'll bring everyone on screen now. Do you just want to chat to us a bit about what your take on what's happening at the minute, John, and just your connections with Cameroon and how you see what's happening in Cameroon paralleling with what's happening in England at the minute?
Yeah, absolutely. It was very, very interesting listening to yourself, sir. You know, and how that I believe that no one should be driven towards this ethno nationalism that is growing, I guess, right across the globe. Now, over the last few days, Richard, here in Belfast, what we've noticed is that people who have never ever shown any signs of racism whatsoever, they're being wound up against each other, and they're being wound up against each other for political purposes. Now, I have quite a few friends from Cameroon, and let me just tell you a story which developed and started to happen probably from January of 2017. Cameroon is split up into two sections. In the north of Cameroon, we have the Francophone end of Cameroon, where the French basically liberated Cameroon after the Second World War, from what I've been told. And on the south of Cameroon, we have what's known as the Anglophone side of Cameroon, where the British basically they set up base. And the people of Cameroon in the south of Cameroon, what they did was they adopted all the British ways. And that included, you know, the Christianity, the moral principles, and all that came with it. Now, those people became so embroiled in British culture. And what actually happened was in January 2017, the Francophone end of Cameroon, they decided that they were going to push the French-speaking teachers into the Anglophone side of Cameroon. Now, that developed into a bloody civil war in October of 2017, which has lasted until today, where many, many people have lost their lives. And that's the sort of thing that we're not actually hearing on our news. And, you know, those people adopted the British ways so much that they told the French basically to sling their hook, and they're happy that the way they are, and they're happy that their people, they stayed with the British ways, the Christianity and everything that came with it. Now, in the past 6 years, I've made many, many friends from Cameroon, both here and in England and also in Ireland, and I have to say they're decent, salt of the earth type people, as are people from Nigeria, I may add. And you know, there's many, many people, and how I actually explain, let me just explain to people here. You see, although that they have a different color of skin, they're just like you and I. There's absolutely no difference in our way of thinking. And honestly speaking, if you heard some of the principles that they had and the way that they adopt and the way that they teach their children and everything else, you would absolutely see no difference from I guess here and the way that the United Kingdom used to be. And I say used to be because we seem to have lost all our sense of, I guess, moral values and everything else that goes with it. So I just wanted to come on to explain that ethno-nationalism really isn't the way. And really what we should do is people like ourselves should continue to reach out to people with a different color of skin who have came to the United Kingdom and want to make the United Kingdom their where they live, and they want to adopt the British way, and they want to blend in, and they don't want to cause any problems. And I have to say, these globalists who are fermenting trouble and race war, because that's what they're trying to do, they must never be allowed to have success in doing so.
I think that's absolutely right. And again, I mean, do you want to comment on that, Pastor Wally? Just, you know, just the point that John's made about the globalism and the way the globalists are trying to use an agenda to, because obviously what you said at the beginning was about Great Britain. And when we look at what's happened particularly in the past, I suppose, 20 to 30 years with the European Union and other entities with global ambition, what they seem to try and do is, and we've talked about this many times on this channel, in Northern Ireland, they'll try and pit Protestant against Catholic. In Scotland, they'll try and pit Unionist against Scottish nationalist, because that suits their agenda to divide and conquer. And the whole issue is, obviously, even putting Christianity aside for the moment, the issue that we've got in this country is, like the books you've written, how do we keep the country united? And obviously the reality is, the answer you're going to talk about is through the gospel. But for those people that aren't Christians, how can we get them behind this British culture that you're so proud of and I'm so proud of, and make this work? Wally, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think I said it earlier on, Richard. We need to go back to our history. Let's go back. It's not everything about our history that was great, but there are so many things that this nation can be proud of. Let's begin to teach our children. I'm telling you something. By the time we begin to teach them what this nation used to be, our foundation, many people will be inspired and they will rise up. That's my own conviction. It's important. Let's go back to teach our history. Christians have to rise up. People who are not Christians, let's look at what was good in our history and let's rise up for it. I'm so proud about the freedom in this country. You know, there are not many nations where you can talk the way we're talking.
Yep.
So it is based, it's rooted in the gospel. So those are, we may not agree based on my Christian beliefs, but there are some principles that we can agree, which are rooted in the history of this nation. So I believe, let's teach it, let's agree. You know, there are people who may come on this platform, they may not agree on my convictions or my belief, but for goodness sake, we're all human beings. There are certain things that hold us together, which has built this nation, which we have stood for over the decades and over the years. The things that the fathers of this land paid a great price. You know, let me say it again. I'm such a proud person to be in this country.
Yeah.
And that's why I will stand up to make anything to make sure that this nation is great.
I think that's absolutely right, and I mean the problem that we've got, Wally, is that we're not getting the education system, the traditional education system, the schooling system is not teaching the children that. So what can we do to teach people these truths? Because again, so often when you talk about these things, you're shouted down, you're called a bigot, you call this, that, and the other. How can we actually overcome that and teach our children? I mean, I think it boils, and I've said this many, many times on this channel and on other platforms. Britishness boils down to three things, and I believe they're all biblical principles: freedom, equality, democracy, and sovereignty. And those four principles are, to me, the core of Britishness, from a secular standpoint, but they are biblical principles. So how can we start teaching people that? And there's so much to unpick. We've got to unpick just the terrible indoctrination that we see has gone on among our young people. How do we do that? How do we overcome that? How do we start this education process that you're talking about?
Well, Richard, let's start small. That was what our fathers did. You know, there are people who are watching us today who are horrified about what's happening. You know, there are people that have finances. There are people that have buildings. You know, let's start. Let's begin to put up schools in different places and let's model it. Let's begin to teach, you know, what we're talking about. And before you know, we're going to raise up another generation. This is very important. This is why I say to people, you know what? We should stop complaining if we're not going to bring an alternative. It's very, very important. We should begin to set up schools where we teach our children.
Yeah, and one of the things as well, Pastor Wally, I want to bring John back in, but one of the things one of the guys was asking earlier was, have you got any hassle for basically taking the stand that you've taken, either from people in your own church or from people in a more widespread community basis? You know, are you getting grief for associating with people who are deemed a little bit, let's say, off the reservation, like me and maybe Tommy? Are people giving you a hard time for your association with people like us?
Well, you know, Richard, I've been doing this for a long time. I wrote my first book almost 20 years ago, which was launched in Parliament, and you can see the title, Great Britain Has Fallen. Immediately I wrote that book, all hell was loose against me. You know, media, they came against me, pitched me against some people, you know, all manner of things all over the national newspaper. They called me, is this man a prophet or is he mad? You know, put my faces with that of the Prime Minister, the Queen, and everything. But you know the truth of the matter. When Jesus was here, he was never famous. He stood for the truth. You know, I just want to stand for what I believe in, my convictions. I'm not raising up arms. I'm not, but you know, it's okay. We got to stand for our conscience. We got to stand for the truth. And that's exactly what I am doing. You know, I think I'm okay with our church members. They know that. They know my convictions. And, you know, as far as I'm concerned right now, I've not had any attacks. No.
No, that's good to hear. What's your take on it, John? What's your thoughts on how we can change the situation that we're facing?
Richard, it's going to be very, very hard to change, and the reason why it's going to be very, very hard to change without, I would say, the authorities maybe coming in and trying to implement some sort of draconian measures to try to keep people apart. And what I mean is these globalists seem to be hell-bent in stoking divisions and stoking racial tensions. I mean, here in Northern Ireland, we even have a Republican group who they're proud to be, you know, they call themselves communists. They're almost styling themselves on being red and communistic and everything else. And these people, they are standing at protests and they're stoking tensions, and what they're doing is they're exposing people who would be trying to keep people apart. I mean, nothing that we ever do, Richard, I don't have to tell you this because you already know it, but nothing that we ever do is designed to drive people apart. It's about seeking fairness. I mean, I come from the standpoint that I believe that your belief, your culture, your way of life, your lifestyle, and your lifestyle choices, they should be between you and your fellow enthusiasts. And if we want to crack this nut, what we need to do is we need to ensure that what you believe, it's not permitted to interfere in anybody else's way of life. And if anybody wants to join you in your culture or your belief or your way of life, well then so be it. They can do so, and they should be open. We should be open and inviting to them to come and do so. But I honestly believe that there's powers, there's forces at play here which are wanting to stoke tension so that they can come in and they can implement draconian measures. And then they'll say, well, look, we had to implement these laws to keep yous apart, when it was them who stoked this in the first place. And what's even worse, in my opinion, and I fight with our politicians tooth and nail day and daily as a result of this. Who do I blame? I blame our conservative politicians. I believe that it's our, here in Northern Ireland, our so-called Christian DUP who won't stand up above and put their head above the parapet and complain about this. Just this week, we are putting our DUP under pressure to stand up, to talk to the police, to ensure that the police protect our monuments, to protect our heritage and the things that we hold so dear here in Northern Ireland. Why? Because we don't want our people going and standing at those monuments and ending up being sucked into a fight with black people who don't even know what they're being sucked into and pushed into. So I honestly believe that this is going to be a very, very hard nut to crack. And if I could say anything to anybody that is listening, we need to begin a process of getting together and holding our politicians to account. And if it means protesting outside your councillors and your MPs' offices and just to dictate to them, that they're not to dictate, but certainly to say to them, yous have to do this, yous have to stand up, yous have to ensure that the police put a stop to this, because we don't want Englishmen going to jail over this. We don't want Northern Irishmen going to jail over this, and we don't want anybody Western worldwide going to jail over this. We need to demand that they're put down, and they're put down with the law, good and proper.
Well, I mean that's an interesting point, and what I want to touch on something. Not Richard and John, there is feedback. Guys, I'm going to try and see if I can do something here, because there seems to be a lot of feedback. I'm going to try removing myself. Hopefully this won't close the whole thing down, and see if I can re-enter myself, because there are some things I want to talk about that are quite important relating to this weekend. So bear with me 2 seconds. I want to see if I can remove myself and then re-enter. So if you guys just keep talking, because there seems to be a feedback problem with and I think it's coming from my side of things. So hopefully I won't close the stream down when I do this. But if I do, what can you do? That's it.
Wally, I would like for you to explain, the basis of Christianity and what it means to be a Christian in terms of having free will to do things, because what is coming right now and what is being forced upon everyone, I don't see free will in that equation. Could you just tell us about what it means to be a Christian and what it means to have free will?
Well, John, first of all, to start, the way God created man is to give us a free will. I believe that's one of the greatest gifts is given to us. You're on this show tonight because you have a free will, and every single man should be accorded that. You have a free will of association. You have a free will of religion, of whatever you want to do. And this is one of the hallmarks of Christianity. Christianity gives you an opportunity to exercise your free will, your freedom. You don't have to be coerced. Freedom of association, freedom of conscience, your rights, and all kinds of things. And what does it mean to be a Christian? Is to have a personal relationship with Jesus. I did that many years ago. My life changed. That's what has affected my worldview. That's what has affected my worldview today, Richard. I'm a Christian. That's why I got to respect everyone I meet. Doesn't matter whether they're Christians or not. I got to honor them. whichever nation I go to, I have to honor them. So that's what I'm saying. And that's why I can speak up. It doesn't matter. Somebody might be a Hindu, somebody might be a Muslim. I have to respect them, their free will, you know. But they also have to respect our free will. That's one of the things, that's one of the reasons why I speak up in this country. This is a Christian country. Yeah. And it's important that we are accorded a free will. It's important that we are accorded a free speech, and we are not labeled as somebody who is in the extreme.
Absolutely. And on that subject of free will, I mean, I would just like to suggest to everybody here that, you see, no matter why that you believe in Christianity or not, you know, the Western world was founded and built upon Judeo-Christian values. And within those Christian values, we have the ability to decide freedom, you know, to be religious or not be religious or whatever way that you want. And I have to say, you know, you really need to protect Judeo-Christian values, because within that is your free will. And if we somehow think that we should subscribe to something else, well, I'll tell you right now, and you'll understand it, is that, you know, we have the freedom of expression, the freedom of speech, your right to criticize bad law, your right to criticize and point out corruption as and where it exists. And all these things are under attack right now. And that's why, no matter whether you're a Christian or not, you need to go back to the foundations and protect Judeo-Christian values, because that's exactly what it means to have such values, is to have free will.
Absolutely, absolutely, John. You know, again, I say, let's go back to our history. The history of this country is built on Christianity. John, how many countries? I can name so many countries in the world, but you can go into some countries that are not basically Christian countries. You cannot associate. You cannot talk freely. They will have taken you out. They will have shot you, all kinds of things. But because this nation, Britain, is built on Christian principles, Christian value, that's why, again, we can receive people from different cultures, different nations. They can criticize our government. They can form political parties. They can have free opinion. They can have free religion. And this is what we must be proud of. And this is what every person in this nation must protect and speak up with.
Yeah, absolutely.
I agree, and I think can everyone hear me okay now without feedback?
Yes.
Is that a better connection? I've transferred to my phone. There's obviously something happening on my PC, but anyway, I think one of the things I want to touch on, and John touched on it there earlier on, and it's really what's happening at the weekend and what's happening on Saturday in London. And I actually think, and some people have put it on this stream tonight, I think people are trying to trick us into getting into a confrontation with black people on the streets at the weekend. And I think we've got to resist that urge. I totally want people to protest and to stand at those monuments and to make sure the monuments aren't damaged by Antifa and other hooligans. But I think what we've got to avoid, and what's very, very dangerous at the minute, is the issue where we may be in a situation where there is a black on white confrontation on the streets, and that must be avoided. I'm sure both you gentlemen agree with that. Yes, it is right to protest against thuggery, and it's right to stand at war memorials and at statues of Winston Churchill, who was voted the greatest Englishman that ever lived. But we cannot let the Antifa and people who want to destroy our nation demonize our movement by giving them what they want, which is a street confrontation that would be a black on white street confrontation. And I think that's a really important message that we've got to get across. I did a video yesterday calling on the Metropolitan Police to basically give us assurances that they would police the situation correctly, because the reality is the reason that people are talking about going to these monuments, and if I was in England I would go, but I can't get to England because we're basically on Alcatraz at the minute. You can't get out of Northern Ireland. We're kind of trapped here on this island, as John will verify. But the reason that people feel they have to go to that is because the Metropolitan Police failed to police those demonstrations properly and allowed serious disorder and criminal damage to take place against the police and against those cherished monuments. And I did a video yesterday challenging the Metropolitan Police to do something about that and to protect them properly. The police contacted me this morning and have given me assurances that they are going to defend those monuments. So the reality is there should not be any reason for patriots to put themselves in harm's way. Yes, go and peacefully protest at those monuments and stand there and take a stand for what you believe in, but don't put yourself in danger of getting dragged into a street confrontation that will lead to prison, that will lead to, because they will come down on people that they deem to be far right like a ton of bricks, more than will come down on anybody else. Don't put yourself in risk of going to prison, and also don't put yourself into a position where you could be physically harmed or other people could be physically harmed in a confrontation. And the other thing about that, if that confrontation takes place, the reality is very simple, that what will happen is our enemies in the mainstream media will not look at this feed where we're talking about how we can fix things and how we can make things right. What they'll do is our enemies will take that information from the mainstream media. When I'm talking about our enemies, I'm talking about disgusting leftist groups like Hope Not Hate and Antifa. They will take that information and use it ad infinitum to demonize us and our groups. So what I'm saying is, if you're going to go to London on Saturday, make sure, and we've always said this right the way through, make sure you peacefully protest and you do not get dragged into a street confrontation that could be deemed to be a black and white street confrontation. What do you think, guys?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll let you go, Wale. Go ahead.
I think, thumbs up for that. We have to be law-abiding citizens. People can protest, but for goodness sake, you only have one life to live. You don't want people to take out your life. You don't want to destroy things. I say to people, we don't gain anything by destroying lives and property. So I want to encourage anybody, whatever you want to do, make sure you follow the law, make sure your voice is heard, but please don't get into any confrontation and don't endanger your life. It's not worth it.
Exactly. And I mean, the reality is what the enemies of the United Kingdom and what the enemies of Britain want is to provoke that confrontation. And we're not just talking about people on the far left, we're talking about the globalists, people in the establishment who want to be authoritarian and take us out of and keep us in the European Union, people who want to take away our freedoms. What they dream of street confrontations. They want street confrontations. So we must avoid that. And one of the things that we've got to show, and I think it would be a marvelous thing if we do, when we do the demonstration in July, and Pastor Wally, you're invited to speak at that demonstration. That demonstration in July, it would be good if we had a very equal proportion of black and white faces marching behind that banner to oppose the sexual abuse of children, because we could widen that out and talk about Nigeria and what's happening in Nigeria as well, with exactly the same situation and exactly the same corruption in terms of girls being abused by jihadists and extremist Muslims, and it's happening the world over. So it would be a great thing if we had, people from your church, people from your community, from Nigeria, walking with us in July in an act of unity, so we can say this is what we believe in, this is what we're standing for. And again, what sort of a message would that send out to the world, that there is no racial divide in the United Kingdom? We're fighting for the same causes, and we're fighting for these same causes, not just on a national basis, but on a global basis.
Yeah. Just a couple of days ago here in Northern Ireland, we had the bizarre situation develop whereby there was a protest outside the Belfast City Hall. And, a young lady, she couldn't have been that old. She was a young black lady, probably late teens, I would say. And I don't think the young lady knew what she was being drawn into. And she was amongst the crowd and she was shouting out and screaming out. And excuse this expression, but "Fuck your Union Jack," she was shouting. And, you know, I get straight onto our politicians, and, you know, I'm sort of saying, look, this young lady, she doesn't even know what she's getting involved in here. But I believe that you know, they need to stand up. They need to go, and they need to insist that our police force would go and, you know, get a hold of that young lady and make a public example. Now, I'm not saying in a harsh way, but I'm certainly saying that what needs to be done is it needs to be shown that that is hate crime. That is incitement to hatred. And that needs to be dealt with, because only when people see that the police are willing to deal with these things, I mean, that's the only thing that'll diffuse people. Now, I realise that made me angry, that young lady saying that. And there was another situation that developed, and I was sent a video on Sunday from some young black lads in Dublin, or not Dublin, Cork. And what had happened was they had beat this young white guy up. And for what? Because somebody across the world was you know, maliciously beaten by you know, white policemen. I mean, that should have been confined to Minneapolis or wherever it was, and those policemen should have been dealt with. But these globalists, they don't care what they ferment, what they create. And, you know, our towns and our cities and our streets could be turned into war zones if only that we react in the wrong way. And I believe that these young lads, that they beat a young white lad up, they filmed it, and it was publicly shown on Facebook that they were stabbing this young lad in the process. Now, what made matters even worse, because I believe that the young lads were wound up to do such a thing, and they don't even know what they're getting involved in. But what made matters worse was a friend of mine. He went and he got some newspaper articles from Cork in and around the time. And would you believe that the newspaper articles are just passing it off as a stabbing? Now, you turn that around and you know, imagine that a white man had done that to some of these Black Lives Matter people. Well, you know how that it would be stirred up. It would be stirred up as far-right extremists, racists. They're killing black people. And I believe, I mean, the mainstream media have a lot to answer for. Yeah. And I would just say one more thing, because the mainstream media are reporting this in a warped way, in a warped and a twisted way, and it's only designed to drive people apart. And I have to say, and Tommy does a great job, as do yourself and other people who you know, has taken up this citizens journalism. But we really need to get serious. We really need to get real, and we need to go toe to toe with these mainstream agitators, these people in the media who are willing to pit people against each other. And we should turn our energies towards those people, and we should do so in a relentless way to ensure, as they say, that our nation is saved and all this nonsense stops.
And the problem that we've got is, I mean, and I don't know again if you've experienced this yourself, Wally, but the issue we've been banned from social media platforms purely and simply for speaking the truth about issues like grooming and Islamic terrorism and so on and so forth. And we've just been I mean, Facebook just won't let any of our people onto its platform whatsoever. YouTube does something similar. I mean, David, I don't know if you know David Woods, that does a lot of the research into Islamization and from a Christian point of view, he's a theologian from the United States. He was banned from YouTube for a week for posting statistics about the persecution of Christians throughout the globe. I don't think he was just talking about Islam, to be quite honest. I think he was talking about North Korea and everywhere. And they banned him and said that he was inciting violence. So we've got some real battles to fight. And it's like you were saying, Pastor, we need to get people that have got finance, that have got expertise. We need web designers. We need social media experts. We need people capable of building platforms. And I would put that out there tonight. I mean, there's only 72 people left on this stream because it has been rather a long stream. But the reality is we need those experts to get in touch with us. We need people with finance to get in touch with us. We need people with finance to support you, Pastor Wally, to support you, John, in what you're doing, because none of this is done on fresh air. All of us are doing this activism as well as trying to do full-time jobs and rear families and look after families and that sort of thing. So it's a real battle. And again, I know one or two men can make a huge difference, but you know, when I think about Tommy, and I'll say this tomorrow when Tommy comes on the stream, but when I think about Tommy, and you think about Tommy in the biblical sense, I think about Tommy Robinson as a David and Goliath type character. I mean, you look at King David, and you look at the courage he had and the boldness he had. But when I see Tommy, Tommy's not afraid of anyone, and he's not a big man in stature, as but he packs a hell of a punch, and he fears no man. And what we need is lots and lots of people like that who are basically going to take a stand for our country, and literally push back against this satanic plot to undermine everything that's dear to us and everything that's that's precious to us. Pastor Wale, thank you so much for coming on tonight. We got a double blessing. We had you twice. I don't know if you can be free tomorrow night at 7:30. I know it's a big ask, but I think Tommy really wants to do a stream with you, so we'll talk about that off air. But it would be great to get you and Tommy on that stream tomorrow night at 7:30. So if you can do that, that'd be great, and we could have a real chat. I'm going to try and find out what's happened with the sound here, because I'm here. I don't know if our listeners are hearing feedback, but I'm hearing a lot of feedback. But yeah, Pastor Wale, thank you for coming on. And John's a regular on this program. John is a great patriot, and he always had a lot of very, very wise, and again, like yourself, Pastor Wale, measured counsel. Because what we need, the problem is, I can be a hothead from time to time. I'll put my hands up and admit it. But what we need are sensible, calm voices to calm hotheads like me and Tommy down from time to time, and basically make sure that we act sensibly on the whole. Like I said, I'm passionate about the things that I believe in. Sometimes that can come across in a way that maybe doesn't express exactly what I'm trying to put across. But Pastor Wale, thank you, bless you. I don't know if you want to lead us in prayer before we leave tonight, Pastor Wale.
Yeah, Father, thank you so much for my friend Richard and John and Tommy and all the people who are speaking up for righteousness and justice. I pray your blessings over them, Lord. Help us to know you more clearly. And we pray for our nation. Bless Great Britain. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Pastor Wale. And if you're free, let's try and do it all again tomorrow at 7:30. And I'll be talking to the lad from Luton tomorrow to make sure that's going to be 100%. He should definitely be on tomorrow night at 7:30. He had a very important video that he was editing. He has to do that. He has to get that out. So it just didn't get done in time. And if anyone's done video editing, you just know that can take a lot longer. As John's laughing, because it takes a long time to get videos properly edited, and that's why he couldn't get on tonight, because that video has to go out because it's about a very, very important issue. So, guys, Pastor Wale, I'll see you again at 7:30. John, you're more than welcome to bounce on tomorrow night when Tommy's on the stream, because Tommy knows you as well. And let's have a good one tomorrow night, and let's just make something positive happen in the country, because I was getting to the point of despair earlier on in the week when I was seeing what was happening in London and what was happening around the country. And I think what's happened tonight for me is Pastor Wale has definitely brought in an air of positivity and just again a good moral and Christian foundation, which I don't think, even if you're not a Christian, you can learn a lot from gentlemen like Pastor Wale and from John as well. So, guys, it's been an interesting broadcast. It didn't go exactly the plan, but let's try again tomorrow night at 7:30, and hopefully we'll have a really good one tomorrow at 7:30. Thank you again, gentlemen. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
You know.